Okay.
Yeah. So we have an instant bond already because like I have probably just as many freckles as you do, if not more. And that's it's not a normal or not it's more rare than anything. So I love it.
Yeah, that's when I've like I have a stepson and I've like had to explain to him what freckles are. And I'm like, I don't even know if I really know. Like, he's like, do you get them in the sun? And I'm like, yes, I think. Yeah, like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's like they start connecting a little more in the sun is what happens.
Yeah, they get like more aggressive or something.
And black light parties are not our friend. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's funny.
The stuff we that other non-freckly people go through.
Uh-huh.
So I'll jump. I mean, I might use some of this beginning banter, but I'll do your intro separately,
Sweet.
Sarajane. And do you go by Sarajane or Sarah?
Sarajane.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I figured some people might call you Sarah, but okay. So I ask everybody this question first and foremost, right in the beginning, and it's really just to get an idea of like where you're at right now in your life and business. Um, right now, today, like when you wake up in the morning, Sarajane, what is it that just makes your heart just jump for joy? You get up and your heart just starts singing. What is it that does it for you?
So I'm writing a second book. This one's a memoir. So just like writing every day, like I could do it. Yeah. Just knowing that I get to write that day is like the best thing ever.
That's awesome. And that's your creative mind because I know you have like YouTube channel, Enneagram and coffee. I'm going to say them all here. I'm going to do it. You have a coffee Instagram that I believe is like actually like making coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You you have your podcast, and then you also have a relationship course, Enneagram relationship course that's going on. I mean, there's just a lot. Now you have the second book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even gonna ask you how you fit it all in, but I want to know like how do you stay so creative? Like what do you think it is about yourself, or what do you do at a daily that keeps this creative genius flowing? I'm curious.
I think there's something in my bones that just has to make stuff. So I think that that's the first piece of that. But I also, I think I really listen to my energy. And if I don't have what it takes to create that in that moment, I will say this is the biggest shift that I've made. I didn't know this for years, but I used to, run businesses and I would push through when my energy would sink and I would just like keep going. And what I realized is that during those like hours in which I was exhausted and I was trying to work, that I was actually just pretending to work. Like I was just kind of playing pretend. Like I would get on my computer, I would look on Facebook, I would look on Instagram, I would just kind of waste this time. And so I was working these 8-hour days, but really I was effectively working maybe 3 or 4 of those hours. And now, whenever I get that like slump, I just take a break and I just let myself rest and have what my body needs. And then when I come back, I'm much more rejuvenated. And I think the same thing goes with like taking weekends off or I just took 2 weeks off. And for 1 week of those, I didn't have any screens. I turned my phone off for the week. I turned the iPad off and I started writing a book. Like, because that's where I read 7 books and I started writing my own book because it's like, there's time and energy and space to actually hear my own thoughts and be creative, because I think most of my time, if I'm not careful, can just be ingesting other people's thoughts and
Wow.
other people's ideas and not putting things out.
Yeah, this is so cool you bring that up. I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita right now, which is like an old text. Oh, are you familiar by your face with
I
it?
haven't read it, but
Oh, okay.
I love that you're reading it.
Yeah, and it actually talked about it said something, can't quote it, but something about you can't experience true joy until you've experienced true peace. And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like by you disconnecting like that, which I'm so glad you brought up, um, you did that. Did that give you any kind of, I mean, day 1, day 2, day 3 of doing that? Because I can't tell. I know I haven't. I know my spouse hasn't done that for a week, even a day or two, really. Did you get like any anxiety, or what feelings did you have as you went through that?
I think day 3 was like deep depression, like if I'm honest, because and I think I don't want to like presume your type, but I think you've said that maybe you're a type 7. Are we the same Enneagram type?
I'm a 7 through and through. Like there's
Okay.
no absolutely no, and I'll be in bed. Okay. Just, and I'll let you get back to it, but I'll be in bed and,
Yeah.
my wife, Catherine, will be reading and she'll turn over and go, and she'll just tell me another remark about a 7 that she's reading about, in your book or someone else's book. And then I'll be like, yep, that's me again. Yep. I need to work on that. Yep. That is me. So I'm totally through
Yeah.
and through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, no, it's good. So I'm a 7 as well, and like part of my struggle in life has been that stillness and been being able to not fill my time every single moment of the day. And I like being busy, and I realize that the reason I like being busy is so that I don't have to be present.
Mm,
And when I can, so that practice of like really unplugging is forced presence, meaning like I don't have any distractions. I don't have I'm in quarantine. I don't have anywhere to go. Like it was
yeah.
really a struggle. And almost like everything in my being is like, we don't want to do this. We don't like this. And I had to really like breathe through that and be like, okay,
Oh,
you're okay. And I've practiced, part of my work in Enneagram has been naming my negative emotions. So saying like, I feel trapped. I feel afraid. And like being able to say it out loud just takes so much power away from it, because
mm,
before I say the phrase out loud, it's just like this thing that's generating energy in my body. And it feels like that energy, I like to turn that energy into action. Like that's like, I can just do something with all this. But when I'm forced to not take action, then that energy starts to feel like it's, because it starts to boil right under the surface. It starts to like feel compacted, and I have to expend it. And instead, I can just say, I feel angry or I feel sad. And then that energy can kind of get tended to without me having to overcompensate, which I think I've overcompensated for it most of my life.
well, I think that that goes along with any type 7 because you're explaining exactly
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I think I'm going to start saying those feelings and emotions out loud. Part of my growth process has been to try to experience more emotions
Mm-hmm.
because going back to Enneagram as a type 7, we don't want to feel the negative. We don't want to feel the sad. We want to be more positive and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question to go back to like kind of the beginning for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember like the day or the moment where you read about Enneagram for the first time, or you read your type for the first time? Like, where were you? What feelings did you have? Because I mean, that's now you're like, I don't want to say guru, but you're very wise and knowledgeable in this space. So can you walk us through that time?
Yeah, actually, so I first heard about it. I was at this like dinner at a barn somewhere, and my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, he and I were just talking about our relationship and just kind of the differences in who we are. And we had friends who were like, have you heard of the Enneagram? And I imagine they heard our types, coming through in that. They didn't type us. And so then the next day we went to a coffee shop and we took the test together. And he typed as a 7 and I typed as a type 2. And I read the 2 and I was like, I'd like for that to be me. Like, I felt like complimented. I was like, oh, I'm so helpful. I'm such a good person. And he typed as a 7 and he's a 4. And he was like, this just, I can see
Wow.
some of this, but I don't see a lot of it. And I read the description that he got and I was like, this feels like someone followed me my whole life and just kind of like pointed out everywhere in which that I have like messed up, or all of the ways in which I've like all of the things in my deep psyche and the ways that I function. I felt like someone had like gone into my soul and just been there for a while and described it. And then it took me a long time to really commit to being a 7, honestly, because I think partially because I'm a counter type, so I can look a little bit like a 1 or like a 2 in other ways.
Yeah.
Um, but once I finally really nailed down on the 7, I was like, I mean, I still every single day feel relief that there are other people out there who think like I do and experience the world like I do.
It's interesting you just said that at the end there. So it makes you it makes like knowing that there's millions of sevens, millions of
Mm,
sixes. So you do millions of your type, knowing that you're not the only one going through those thoughts.
yeah.
Is that what you mean by that? So you don't feel alone
Yeah.
in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And just like I'm not like one, like this is an experience. It doesn't have to be my experience. Like just that comfort. But then also like I'm not the only one. There's a lot of us and
Yeah.
we're gonna, it's okay.
Yeah. I love that. Is there a scenario where for people, there's definitely listeners on my podcast right now that have no idea what an Enneagram is, right?
Hmm.
And then there are people that do. Is there like a specific scenario, for example, that you can like type each person? For example, what I mean is like 9 people go out to dinner, right?
Hmm.
And the dinner's late, and there's people around them that start to get their food first, even though these people sat down. You guys all sat down together, and then what goes through each person's mind as a different type? Is there any kind of scenario like that you can share?
Yeah. I think what's interesting too is that we could all be in the same situation and do the same behavior and be doing it for a different reason.
Yeah,
So I think like if we're sitting down to dinner, I think that the more compliant types, which are types 1, 6, and 2, are going to be really aware of how other people are experiencing the situation. They're going to want to know how they should show up in the situation. Um, and then we're going to have like 7, 3s, and 8s, which they're more assertive types. They're going to be more concerned with their own prerogative, like getting their own needs met, what they want, how they want it to go. And there's the more withdrawing types, 4, 5, and 9, which are going to be more focused on like just staying out of it and like getting through the experience without being um, in the center of the conflict or in the center of the
yeah.
shuffle.
Okay, okay. And for let's just get this out of the way. Is if you want to figure out your type, what is the best source? Your website? I mean, what's the best source to do that?
Yeah, I see. So everybody's gonna be tempted to take a free quiz online. And I will say, like you heard me say earlier, like I mistype, my husband mistype. It's very, very common to mistype unless you are like straight average level of health, um, really are honest about your instincts. It's going to be hard to type correctly. So I
Mm.
would say really focus on reading the descriptions, and I think get the book. I think getting my book or getting another book is a great way to start, and read the book and read the type descriptions and see which motivations, which fears, and which worldview you relate to.
Yeah. Well, I think self-awareness becomes a big part of this, right? Because like you said,
Hmm.
you can type yourself for who you want to be, who you think you might be.
Hmm.
So maybe like go to therapy for a year and then type yourself.
Yeah.
No, just to figure out some more self-awareness, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times we mistype for a couple of reasons. One,
Okay.
we are scared that there's like the bad type and we don't want to be the bad type. So,
Ah,
um I don't think 7 struggle with that as much because I think we all are like, yeah, 7. Like I like it. Even though it's uncomfortable. But there's
yeah.
most types really do have this belief that they're the bad one and that somehow they got the worst type. And I think that's because we are sensitive to our own struggles and we think our struggles are the worst in some way. So
Yeah.
really acknowledging that like every type has light and darkness, every type is good and bad. Like there's no good or bad, it's good and bad. Like it just is what it is. And that will help us to be more honest about what our type structure might be.
Okay. Well, Sarah Jane, so my mindset as like a meditation teacher and a daily meditator is like I know the qualities that really are like shine that make that bring us to our highest self is like love,
Mhm.
compassion, and I'm really interested to see what you say about love, compassion, um, kindness, and joy, right? Just enjoying
Mhm.
things. And then stuff that we don't want as humans are, we want to, we're, I guess not don't want, but we want to be able to manage our stress the best we can. We want to be
Mhm.
able to manage our anxiety, right? When we're going to all have it in our life, we just want to be able to manage it well and not let it be like detrimental to us.
Mhm.
So, and then you also have like, you need money to live. So, you have drive and focus and
Mhm.
consistency are characteristics that I guess would help get yourself to a middle or upper middle class, whatever you want to call it, to being able to have a house and the things, the American dream, quote unquote, right?
Mhm.
So is there like is there a type that, and I hate to ask this, I don't even know if I'm asking correctly, that you don't want to be, or is like the hardest to get to those kind of qualities? Or, I mean, does my question make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the question makes sense. I think that we all are going to have a value set for every number. That is like how we think everyone should be. And then there's when that's over functioning, it doesn't serve us. So I'll use sevens as an example. Like we are like positive thinking, keep your mindset up, focus on the positive. And when that's over functioning, then we tend to neglect the present moment. We tend to neglect our emotions. We tend to live kind of for future plans and not for like what's here and now. We have to work a lot on the present. And so it's like that for every single number. It's just like a type one who is who their values are ethics and being ethical. Well, then that over functions and that can get into black and white thinking, right and wrong, good and bad. And that there's like a good guy and a bad guy, that kind of stuff.
Uh, I see it. And is there, do you meditate, by the way?
I do, yeah. Yeah, every
I
morning.
usually ask that in the beginning. Is it like a daily practice for you?
Yeah, it is. Or at least during the weekday. I
Oh,
sometimes don't on the weekends, but
yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
What does it look like?
It it's progressed over the years. It was really hard for me in the beginning. I would say it was like walking meditations, because I couldn't sit still. And now I just kind of sit with myself for a few minutes and I ask myself what I need that day, and the meditation kind of responds to that. So sometimes the meditation is just stillness and just trying to like legitimately clear my head and clear my mind and be present. Sometimes a meditation, my favorite one is kind of this idea of I have all these balloons attached to me and all of these things that I'm trying to control or hold on to or fix. And I just kind of imagine clipping the strings and letting them go, and kind of feeling the weight of how it felt to have them attached to me and then feeling the lightness of how it feels to release control. That's presently the one I need the most, I would say.
Yeah, I love that, the letting go meditation of like the balloons. That's cool. I've never heard that analogy, and that's a good one to. I'm gonna try that one actually.
Yeah,
That's great.
do.
I have it's funny because I have a question written down here. Like I'm going to ask this, and it's such a type 7 question to ask and be like, so why is 7 the best number to be? But I'm not going to ask that because you've already said it like 3 times that like we think that 7 is so great and amazing, right? Because that's who we are. But what about, how can we use the Enneagram to like look at ourselves as a better, because I like to talk about family a lot in my podcast, like to be a better spouse or a better parent, whatever one you want to talk about. How can we use it to do that?
Mm-hmm. I think it kind of comes back to recognizing that we don't have to be our Enneagram type. So, um, I've lived most of my life with the belief that like I have to be the sunshine. And if I'm not the sunshine, then like no one's gonna, I don't have anything to offer, right? Like what I bring is the fun, I bring the joy, and I make other people feel good. People like to be around me because I'm easy to be around. That's like the story in my head.
Yeah.
And once I kind of can recognize that, like, actually, it's okay to be dark sometimes, it's okay to feel your sadness. It's not the end of the world if you're not the one who brings the joy. Then I can live from a place of like much more complexity and much more depth, and I can start to see how that impacts everything. So a good example of this for me is that as a 7, I don't allow myself to experience negative emotion, right? Like I traditionally reject that in me. And so as I reject this in myself, then I start to reject that in others. And so if I found like I couldn't sit with my friends in their darkness, or, when my son would get really upset or have a tantrum or be really sad, my first response was like, look on the bright side. You have all of these toys, you have this warm room. And like, I didn't even know where my food was going to come from when I was a kid, like look at what you have. You get Lunchables. I didn't get Lunchables, like whatever the thing is, I'm like trying to force him to positively reframe. And from my Enneagram understanding, I'm more able to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like I am giving him the rejection that I give myself. And so if I can more accept myself, then I can much more open to him being a wide range of experiences and having a wide range of emotions.
Yeah, that makes total sense because as a seven, like I'll listen to language a lot more from others
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, I sense like the negative talk or the negative language. And in myself says, oh my God, like, and I start to create like resentment and I start to create
Mm-hmm.
like, well, how could they be doing this? How could they use, don't they know what they're saying or doing? And then that's again, just, I guess, projecting my stuff on it, like you said, onto them. And then realizing that, okay, like having compassion, I guess, is very not difficult, but not a strong suit of a seven, right? So to realize that I'm not having compassion in that moment helps me say, okay, I don't have to be a seven in this situation. I guess I love that you said that. Like we don't have to
Mm-hmm.
be that number in every single scenario, because that's kind of what happens is whether you want to go with Enneagram or personality or whatever. I love that you said that. It was kind of like almost
Mm-hmm.
a refreshing moment by
Yeah.
by mentioning that I don't have to be the life of the party all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that every seven needs a good friend who is like, no, come as you are. Like, bring your bad mood. Because I think for years, and I don't know if you relate to this, but I will say for me that I don't, it's not that I don't experience sadness, but it just is like a private thing. Like it felt like that's like my secret. Like my sadness is like mine. And so I'm going to go into the party, I'm going to smile, I'm going to have fun, we're going to have a good time. And then if I'm having like, if I'm going through something, then I'll go to my car and I'll cry on the way home. But no one will ever really know that that happened. And so it took me finding the Enneagram to realize like that's actually pretty lonely. Like you have lots and lots and lots of people who want to be around you because you like create this environment where like you're just a delight to be around because they don't have to trudge through anything with you. And because of that, like I'm not trudging through things with anyone else. And so I'm not getting to go to this like deep, connective, intimate place with very many people. Um, yeah, I mean, and I will say into my adulthood, I don't, maybe one person that I really like let see me intimately like that.
So is this something that is a piece of you that you're like working, I guess, working on, or is that kind of, or wanting to develop more and bring out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been through phases, right? Like in college, I can remember the moment where I was like, if someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm going to tell them the truth. Instead of just like, I'm great, how are you? Like, how are we doing? I had to like decide like I will tell them if I'm having a bad day or not because I just like know that that's important. It was before the Enneagram. I found the Enneagram, but it was just like this instinct of like I'm shielding people, you know. I don't think of it like that, but that's what I'm doing. So that
How
was
did that
phase
happen?
1.
How, like, where were you when that happened? Like, how did you have that epiphany? You know?
I think I can in most of my life remember being I don't know how to say this without sounding arrogant. Knowing a lot of people knew me, but no one knew me, if that makes sense. So like I could
Totally.
walk through campus and everyone would be like, "Hey Sarah Jane, hey Sarah Jane." Like I knew everybody. But then I would be in this like room of people and I would be like, I'm completely alone. Like and that recognition of like being surrounded by people and feeling like I'm alone, like I'm on this alone. And sometimes I like that feeling, right? Like I kind of like feeling like a solo traveler. Like I just like pop in and out and like I'm me and me or we're good, you know. But on the downside of that is kind of a loneliness in the midst of a lot of things, a lot of action. And I remember feeling that feeling and being like, I don't want to feel that anymore. And I want to make sure that people, I'm choosing to not let them see me. So I have to let them in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I love and just sharing it is doing that, right? Like sharing it with the audience in the podcast and getting it out there is a way of you know, I guess working that
Mm-hmm.
muscles. And I love it because I mean it's, you know, it's like talking, you know, I go through the same exact thing, so it makes total sense to me. For people listening, is there, I have actually, is there a number that like doesn't like the Enneagram because they're that certain number? Has anybody ever asked you that before?
Like if there are people who are just like, like
Yeah,
I
like
don't like
type ones are
this.
like, what is this Enneagram stuff? Like, what is this? I don't want to do it.
I would say fives need the most convincing, but some fives, like I know, are deep, deep, deep into the Enneagram. Like my first Enneagram teacher was a five, um, but if a five, if you can't make a good argument for to a five or an eight, they're going to dismiss it offhand. Especially if you introduce them to the Enneagram through an outlet that doesn't quite get them. So if they get something that's like kind of there, kind of not there, they're going to dismiss it for sure.
What is it about a five that does that?
Fives really value competency and research, and the
Uh,
Enneagram is a theory, right? Like it's just a series of observations over time, and by lots of different people, lots of different doctors and, you know, like psychiatrists and
yeah.
counselors, but it's still just theory. There's not a ton of brain science behind it yet. There is someone who's kind of doing that work right now, but um, so convincing them like this is the theory to pick, this is the theory that you should like,
Yeah.
is really just kind of, it's a battle.
Yeah. So they're more science. And that's actually, speaking of battles, like that whole, in order for it to be true or workable, it has to have scientific background and evidence
Mm-hmm.
and all. And, that doesn't, and my experience and my, I guess, whatever my opinion means, you don't have to have a scientific background if it's impacting you, if it's
Mm-hmm.
doing something for you. And I'm sure you probably get messages daily from people that you're impacting and doing stuff for. And it's people like you we need more of in this world, sharing things and helping others feel better and know themselves better.
Mm-hmm.
Self-awareness. I love that. So first off, thank you for what you do, seriously.
Oh,
I appreciate it. And um do sevens, my spouse is a six, are there certain numbers that work better together? Like, are sevens and sixes good?
I can see that combination. So you know it better than I know it, but I will say that I would imagine you guys have a lot of fun together. Um, and sixes, there's going to be like a little bit of slowing the seven down that is helpful. To help, and sixes really think through things. Sevens take quick action. So that's a really good balancing mechanism to even each other out. But I think with any Enneagram type, you're going to have like pros and cons, like any
Yeah.
combination. It's just is everybody here willing to do the work? That's what
Ah,
matters the most. Like
love it.
if you as a seven are like, yeah, I'm going to look at my stuff, I'm going to deal with it, I'm going to explore this, and she's willing to do the same, then you're much more compatible than if someone is like, yeah, I don't see the problem here, like I'm good. That's gonna create an environment in which one person is going to be doing the work and the other person's gonna that's going to create a severing.
Yeah, and that makes total sense because I used to be the person that she would try to like level me out, right? And I'd be like, no, I don't need that. I'm good. Like I am good. And it's so exactly what you're saying, and that did
Yeah.
not work. Like it would, and that, if that was the way that it was always going to be, it was not going to work, and I'm
Yeah.
well aware of that. So yeah, I love that you said if we can do the work and actually like put the time in and talk about it, and I think what's
Mm-hmm.
really cool, actually, now that we're saying this, is it gives you a base to go from
Mm-hmm.
in your
Mm-hmm.
relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of just like grabbing stuff in the wind, and it gives you like, okay, let's read this about, and then let's see where we can be the yin to our yang. And that is a
Yeah.
really strong thing to work from, especially relationships that don't know where to start.
Yeah, and I
They're
think
struggling.
most of us think our Enneagram type's great. Like we before we find the Enneagram, we think of the things that are described in our type as like the way you're supposed to be. So as a seven, I'm like, positive thinking is like the good way to be. As a six, being prepared is the good way to be. And um, the Enneagram is like, hey, just so you know, that's not always serving you. And so then we're having to then at that point acknowledge like, oh, like the thing that I would be least inclined to work on is positive thinking, right? Like before the Enneagram, if you were like, you know what, Sarah Jane, like you're just too happy, I would be like, excuse me, get out of my face. We're not going to have that conversation. But with the Enneagram, I'm like, oh, I can see how that neglects other areas of my life, how the overfunction of that muscle doesn't serve me in the long term and doesn't serve my relationships long term.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it sounds like I probably can't come to your office or your house or at least your books and find like a happiness book of how to be happy or here's ways to be happier. Like there's no, like, you're not going to find that. And because it would just,
Yeah.
because that's just, there's others, but you'll find books about sad, like tapping into other aspects of my
Yeah.
life and my house.
Mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is a bit like, I think that's why as a 7, some people might look at me like, oh my God, well, how did you like become so almost obsessed with this? Right. And like you
Yeah.
probably did meditation or tried meditation, and it probably didn't take much convincing after a couple of days of you doing it to realize how influential it was to you, because you're like,
Yeah.
wow, oh my gosh, I can slow down. I can like have space. So then
Yeah.
you're
Like
like,
have to be in constant reactive mode. Yeah.
yes, don't have to be in constant reactive. You can find that gap to like have more of a proactive approach. And that makes like, I'm going to be obsessed with that because I never tapped into that before.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
Mm-hmm.
there might be give me a number that might try meditation and say, oh, this is how I am normally anyway. Or I've kind of
Yeah. 4s and 9s
4s and
and
9s.
5s, maybe. Yeah. 4s and
Yeah.
5s.
Interesting. So 4s and 9s and 5s. I'm going to start asking everybody that comes on if they know their Enneagram number and see. That's interesting, but never type somebody, right?
Right. Right.
What is the reason for that?
Because it's a thin line between our projections and our Enneagram knowledge. So I can see you and be like, oh, like you seem kind, you must be a 2. Like, because we have these projections onto we don't ever know anyone's motivation. So you and I, we could exhibit the same behavior for completely different reasons. And because of that, then we have this, people can preconceive what our intentions are and not really understand. So a lot of people think I'm a type 2 or a type 9 because I'm friendly and I'm warm, but they don't realize how quickly I can leave that. So how easy it is for me to put a wall up or put a distance up, or how distant that warmth actually is, if I'm being completely transparent. So while you might see me and you might make an assumption, there is so much going on beneath the surface of every human that is way more intricate and complex than we could ever perceive. I will say, even really experienced people with the Enneagram get it wrong. And I think that when we do this in our intimate relationships, it can become a form of manipulation, like an attempt to get them to work on the things we want them to work on without just asking them directly to work on the things that aren't serving us. So it's kind of like, if I force you to think that you're a 2, or if I force you to see you like I see you, then you will work on the things that I wish you would fix about yourself, instead of it being like their growth journey, their experience, and their knowing of who they are, because that's way more meaningful than like what we push onto people.
Yeah. Yeah. You're sharing such good value bombs here with us with the Enneagram. I was so curious about all this stuff. You said manipulation, which brings me to a thought. Like, so I have an internet marketing background.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think, I know a lot of people that write sales copy, right? For sales funnels and things like that. And one of my thoughts just came up was like, okay, is this a tool if there's like, you're trying to figure out your target audience,
Mm-hmm.
and then to figure out, okay, what type are they, read about that type, and then use manipulative language to bring them closer and draw them into your product or service that you're doing. It almost is like brilliant and gross at the same time as goes through my
Which is kind of like marketing in general, I think. Like we have to do it, and if we do it well, it's brilliant. It's a necessary tool.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of like, oh, this feels weird.
It's exact. And I think like
Yeah.
if you dive deep with the Enneagram and use that, it even feels like when you're using specific theories like that, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, is this drawing a line or is this just really brilliant?
Yeah. And honestly, like I would say I do that. Like I think about like which types will benefit the most from this, and then how can I speak directly to their needs. I also think that like the way that you make it not icky is if you're willing to turn people away and you're willing to
Mm,
tell people when it's not for them. Because I can't let you give me your money if I cannot help you. But I can, if I can help you, then getting you here is only a service, right? It's just an offering versus me. I'm not tricking you. I'm telling you the truth. Like, I know you probably deal with codependency. I know that I have the tools that you need to get out of that pattern of behavior. And in order to give you that service, like, I have to pay my bills. And so that requires a payment. This is kind of the
yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
If you don't struggle with codependency and I let you into here, then you're wasting your money. And that has to be kind of, I think that's the line that I draw personally.
Yeah. That reminds me of like the idea of selling with love.
Yeah.
You're doing that. And that's brilliant. That's brilliant in itself. And
Mhm.
what's Sarah Jane, like what services do you provide, like that somebody can come on your site and be a part of or join that you can really help somebody with going through right now? What
Yeah.
do you have going on?
So right now I have two major things that I think are um, that are important that I feel like I'm really encouraging people to join. The first one is Enneagram and relationships, which is really particularly beneficial again to people who maybe struggle more with codependency, don't have strong sense of self, and that's impacting their relationships. Those are the people who really are going to get the most out of that. And then I have a community called the Brave Collective for people who are wanting to increase their creative energy and to live a more creative, like excited, awake, vibrant life. And that's a
Yeah.
monthly membership community where we just talk about creative blockages, talk about inspiration, talk about sense of self and boundaries and how to do more with your time.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, so yeah, for people listening, Sarah Jane's awesome. And then that's all I got to say right there. Uh, I love female leadership, female, it inspires me, especially my wife she's gotten me, more aware of that. And,
Mhm.
as a feminist and, um, do you, this is just I'm not going to touch on this too much, but I'm just curious as somebody who has a large following and probably has a lot of hands trying to come get at her.
Mhm.
Do you try and make sure that like you surround yourself with strong females to help you lead, or do you find males trying to come in and take your business over and run it this way and do this and they know the right way? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's good. In business, so I traditionally most of my friends have been men. It has taken me a lot of years to like and I think that's because I liked people not asking me about my feelings, and that is much more common
Mm.
around a bunch of guys. Like, they were just let me be there and not ask me too many questions. Um, and then as I became more awoke, like I woke up and kind of came to, I realized like women are amazing. And I was missing out on this like vibrant community of people for so many years. So now I only hire women. And that's not to be like, not like in my company, but like as my teachers, I really invest in female leaders, to because they balance me out, honestly, because I have like very aggressive tendencies. And so they kind of like bring me down and like get me to connect to my heart. And
Ah,
um, not to say that men can't do that. I feel very conscious of how I like to talk female male dynamics, but I think that we're socialized to be such as mostly I hire women. And I do have lots of men in my DMs who tell me what I need and should and can do. And I never respond ever to that energy.
yeah, to that energy. I love that you said that.
Yeah.
The energy. I was just reading a book about energy levels,
Yeah.
and by Frederick Dodson, I believe. Really interesting. I actually listened to it. It was an Audible. Real interesting about people's different energy levels that try to bring you down to theirs and come up. So,
Mhm.
I mean, that's a topic you can explore for forever.
Yeah.
And does it Enneagram? Is there like energy levels in that? Is that described in there with
Mhm.
certain things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I think the first place do that is thinking about the centers that you're in. Like you and I are in the head center, and we have very little access to our heart center. So we kind of have to like tap into our heart. We have to get into our body. Our energy is very front forward. I've been in therapy sessions where the therapist is like, you can lean back, because I'm just like so in, like leaning
Yeah,
forward, like
that's cool.
in your face. And you can, my favorite way to really learn the Enneagram is through panels where you have people of each Enneagram type. All of the types up there are the same. So all sevens or all ones, and you can watch the energy and the body language and the tone of voice and mannerisms and just see the similarities. So yeah, there's a lot to explore
There's a
there.
lot exploring. Cool. And your new book is about, what is it? Because this is, you can see I have it. I tried doing my best here to like
Yeah,
place
that's
the
so
book here.
nice.
The Honest Enneagram.
Yeah.
This is know your type, own your challenges, embrace your growth. I honestly haven't finished it. What I do is I went right to my number, which I know like you're not supposed to do. Like read through it and understand all
We
of
all
it.
do.
But for the purpose of this podcast, I did that. What is the new book going to be about? Like, how are you going to make it a little bit different?
So this one is, Honest Enneagram's all about the Enneagram, and the new book is a memoir. So it's all just about my like life experiences and where I've been, where I'm going.
I love memoirs. Are my favorite reads.
Me too.
I don't know if that has anything to do with being a seven, but it is
Maybe
now
it
like
does.
everything, like everything. Oh man. Is there anything in your life that you, and by the way, I'm going to get that and read it. So I'm excited. When does it come out?
It'll be a while.
Oh, because you're just writing
It'll
it.
be a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
You
just
just
writing it.
finish it. When we got this phone, spend it 48 hours
Finish the
straight up
book.
and just finish
Send it right over.
it. If you need anybody to, I'm an avid reader. If you are seriously need someone to read it or would like feedback, I would love to be on that if you want to. If you
Oh,
see
that's
any
amazing.
value in
Yeah.
that. Okay. And so is there anything in your life as a seven in the past year that you like got rid of or really worked on to get rid of? And then maybe something that you also added in your life?
hmm Emotionally or physically?
You know what? I'll let you decide that.
Okay. I've gotten rid of, let's see. Oh, okay. This year, I think quarantine helped me the most with the getting rid of needing to be busy. Like needing to have every moment accounted for. I like to fill every hour. I used to be the kind of person who would wake up at 6 a.m, leave the house, and come home right before bed, and I would be gone all day long. And that changed a little bit, as I got married and we built a family, but I was still like, I would leave bright and early, come home right before dinner, be gone most of the day. And with COVID, everything that's going on, I've really been forced to sit still, forced to
Mm.
be home. And I realized how relaxed it felt. Like I was like, oh, like I am energetically like calmer. I feel more like grounded. I feel like I have much more peace and space. And so that like was just like a switch went off, and I was like, I don't have to do that anymore. I can just be here and experience my life as it is and enjoy this space. So that's one thing that I've given up, is just feeling that I need to fill all my time.
Yeah.
And something that I've brought in, I will say, um, unplugging. I mean, I think that's like also taking something
No,
away,
that's
but
great. That's
yeah.
I love it.
I every week take one full day off of screens or technology, and then every quarter now I'm taking 2 weeks off of screens and technology, just to have my own thoughts.
Wow. And that was something that you recently added. Wow.
Yeah.
It'll be an interesting chapter in your memoir you're writing about the feelings of that. That's really neat. That's really neat. For an influencer like yourself, and that's a difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a hypnotherapist, and I know we only have a few minutes here, but there was a hypnotherapist, Sarah Case or Oh, Grace Smith. Sorry, I'm sitting here, Sarajane. Grace Smith. I'm looking at your name, Sarajane. Grace Smith. That she had she's a huge following, and I was supposed to have her on my podcast, and she ended up having her baby early, I believe, and so she had to cancel it. But she's taken off until January with
Mhm.
her newborn, like disconnecting. You
Wow.
won't see any posts, nothing, and she's a massive following.
Wow.
So I just find that so interesting in these times to be able to do that. But I'm starting to see it more and more. It's almost like there's
Mhm.
this universal shift happening in people.
Yeah.
And Sarah Jane, I love how you found the positive in COVID happening, right? That's the seven in you to to see how that's created. And I love
Uh-huh.
that. So this conversation was amazing. Like, it was beautiful, honestly. Like, thank you so much for coming on. I was a little nervous before. I'm like, okay, hope this goes well. It's going to go well. It's going to go well. And then it did. So one thing, the question I actually ask everybody at the end of my podcast is, if you could go back, and maybe this you're writing about this, if you can go back to your 18-year-old self and
Mm.
tell her any piece of advice or tell her anything, and she would listen, what would you say to her?
Mm. I have two things. Number one, trust one, like make friends with women sooner, like find girls to connect to. And just like nothing is that serious. Like the way that you view relationships or like your body image, your likability, your like none of that's that serious. No one's paying that close of attention. No one is like you just have fun with it and like enjoy. This is very seven advice, but like just enjoy the experience of being young and play and don't worry so much about like how people if people care, how people feel about that. Just let
Yeah.
let the chips fall as they may.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you might want to add? Any wisdom or any plugs that you wanted to share with us?
No, I feel like the interview was so good. This was so fun. I could talk to you forever. It was easy.
Thanks. Good. I'm glad. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
having me.
yeah, I'll press stop now.